in addition to the heavy taxes. We see what's going on now, a lot of parallels, in addition to trying to seize the guns of the colonies so they could not fight back, defend themselves. And we're always in it for defense. We're peaceful and legal means. And that's the reason for the citizens' grand jury, because the American people have the right, as I said last time. Justice Scalia verified that. In addition to United States versus Williams, that the grand jury belongs to the American people, not to the three branches of government. We have the right to enforce the laws of nature and nature's God, as well as laws that have been enacted by Congress, because the people in charge won't do it, because frankly, there is an unwritten, perhaps it's even written, agreement between Democrats and Republicans that they won't go after each other at the highest level. They continue to make money hand over fist in Washington. They continue to acquire power. The American people are left behind. We need now to take back our legal system. As I said in my book, It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry, which you can get at all major booksellers, and at Freedom Watch, with a contribution of $50 or more, which helps us do our work and pays for the citizens' grand jury. So that's a little advertisement, okay, of what we're doing. But we have a legal right to do it. It is a necessity to do it. What you fellow grand jurors are doing is extremely important for the American people, because certainly under Biden and Harris, you don't have a Justice Department that will take action against the Biden family. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen with regard to others that we're bringing before the grand jury. We will bring James Comey, Andrew McCabe, the Lovebirds, Strzok and Page. We will bring Clapper. We will bring Brennan. We will bring them all in front of the citizens' grand jury, and we will seek indictments for the crimes they have committed against the American people. And then we will seek to enforce that peacefully and legally with the strength of our arguments and also with the strength of numbers in this country, because people, frankly, of all political persuasions these days know, it doesn't matter whether you're left or right, they know that this government no longer exists. It's been seized by radicals of every shape and stripe. It does not represent the American people. It does not represent anything that had anything to do with our Constitution, or for that matter, the American way of life. So let's proceed, Jason, showing this testimony on cable news of Peter Schweizer, and then we'll read the first chapter of his book.
And before we do that, Larry, I just want to remind our viewers that they can watch a simulcast of this video on the Freedom Watch YouTube channel. I really do encourage people to subscribe to Freedom Watch on YouTube. We've been monitoring the subscriptions, and it's interesting, Larry, the more important the information you bring forward is, the more YouTube shenanigans seem to occur. But people can watch on Freedom Watch on YouTube. And as you mentioned, it's very important for our viewers to support the efforts of Freedom Watch by visiting freedomwatchusa.org and making a tax-deductible contribution there. We're going to start with a clip, Larry, from Fox News. This was Peter Schweizer on Sean Hannity. And this has been an investigation Schweizer has been doing for years, so there's even newer information than what he discusses here.
All right, he's back 3 years ago, about this time of year. New York Times bestselling author Peter Schweizer. He launched the book, #1 New York Times bestseller, Clinton Cash. He's out with a new investigative book. It's entitled Secret Empires, How the American Political Class Hides Corruption, Enriches Family and Friends. All right, let me just tell this audience, because I've read the book, and you saw I had it highlighted today, that we're not going to get to the whole thing today. I want to give a broader overview, and we'll do what we did last time. We're going to break it down one by one. You were the first guy to break Uranium One. You talk about profit through proxy. You talk about Biden. You talk about Kerry. You talk about Obama. You talk about Republicans, Mitch McConnell.
Right. That's exactly right. This is the new corruption, Sean, and this is not the corruption of, $90,000 in your freezer. This is major amounts of money.
Billions.
Yeah, billions of dollars in some cases, and it involves foreign governments who want to influence our leaders. And the way they get around disclosures, the way they get around the law is they don't give the money to the politician. They don't even give it to their spouse. They give it to their kids or they give it to a sibling. And that's a way that it avoids detection. And the amounts of money are massive. So, for example, there are 3 major deals involving the Chinese government and family members, close aides of the Secretary of State, John Kerry, and the Vice President.
His adopted son, Joe Biden's son.
And Joe Biden's son. And basically what happens is in 2013, Joe Biden flies to China to talk to them about very sensitive issues, the South China Sea, talking about trade issues, economic issues. Hunter Biden, his son, is with him on Air Force Two. Okay, that's fine. That's great. Here's the problem. 10 days after they come back, after Joe Biden takes a pretty soft position towards the Chinese, Hunter Biden inks what becomes a $1.5 billion with a B dollar deal.
So he takes his son to China.
Yeah.
He was told at the time, if I remember, that he was being soft on China.
Right, exactly.
10 days later,
yes,
his son got a what?
$1.5 billion private equity deal. That's the first of three deals.
$1.5 billion with a B.
That's right, billion with a B. And that's the first of three deals, Sean. There's another deal. This is one that involves Kerry's family. It involves one of Kerry's aides and Hunter Biden. It's Rosemont Seneca Technology Partners. It's an offshore fund. Chinese government puts $38 million into that. Third deal, Rosemont Realty, again, involving these three same individuals. It's a Chinese government buys this real estate company, puts in $3 billion.
How many billions between these three are we talking about?
You're talking about, if you accumulate all of them, you're talking about multiple billions of dollars, at least a couple of $1 billion. And here's the problem, Sean. None of this was disclosed. We have pictures of it. We have the documents. But it wasn't disclosed because federal law doesn't require the Vice President of the United States.
So it's a backdoor way. Like
right.
Obama made a big deal. Oh, 5-year lobbying ban.
Right.
You know,
right.
my, you know what? That's a lie.
Yeah.
Because if Biden's son can go on Air Force Two and make a deal 10 days later for $1.5 billion, and this is the first of a number of deals.
Yes.
This is basically another way to buy influence.
That's exactly right. And that's why it's key. We've got to change the law. There's got to be disclosure. Right now, Joe Biden gets a $1,500 campaign contribution, Sean. He has to disclose it. His son gets a $1.5 billion private equity deal from a foreign government. Yeah. No disclosure.
All right. We're going to bring you back once a week and dig into each one of these scandals one by one. But this is a big headline for our audience, and includes Mitch McConnell.
Right. Right. You've got Mitch McConnell, his wife Elaine Chao, very closely tied commercially to the Chinese government. China's State Shipbuilding Corporation, largest military contractor in China. You've got close commercial ties there. And McConnell, Senator McConnell, and Elaine Chao got a gift from her father from between $5 and $25 million that is a result of that Chinese government money.
We're also going to bring you back on Obama. His deals are a little different and a little shady, too. All right, so you have on the cover of the book, you have Kerry, you have Crazy Uncle Joe, you've got McConnell, Obama, and Jared Kushner. And I read the Jared Kushner part, and I'm thinking, oh, boy, he's in trouble. But it was a lot different. This isn't the same. Why did you put him on the cover if he's not guilty of these same issues?
Sean, we deep scrub everybody. Republicans, Democrats, we've always done that.
McConnell should be nervous about this book.
Yeah, I think he should be very nervous about this book. In the case of Jared Kushner, look, there's no deals that have been consummated. We didn't find any foreign deals. What we did find, though, is the Chinese government has said they don't like President Trump's policies on the military. They don't like his policies on trade. And they explicitly said the way we're going to try to soften his position is by going through the kids. So we really are, it's a warning saying, so don't take these
These
deals.
others did corrupt deals. You're just saying, in Jared's case, you better learn from these guys. Don't do it.
That's right. Don't do it. It's going to be damaging to the family. It's going to be damaging to the country.
All right. This book, Secret Empires, bestseller, Amazon.com, Hannity.com, bookstores everywhere. Peter, good to see you.
There it is, Larry.
This is very important to see that. Of course, Sean Hannity's doing the interview, and he's kind of become the Tokyo Rose for Donald Trump. I like Donald Trump, and I supported him, and Freedom Watch supported him as well. But to listen to Hannity just slough it off with regard to Kushner, it tells you, what's going on. Listen to what Schweizer says, not what Hannity says, because Hannity's credibility is pretty low. In any event, let's play the next portion here. And by the way, we will be seeking the indictment of Mitch McConnell. That's coming up too. So that part is accurate.
Yeah. And in this next interview, Peter Schweizer provides some of that additional information that I was talking about. I think people are going to find this very interesting. So let's just get right to that.
surrounded the Biden's lack of concerns over China. In an op-ed in the New York Post, Peter Schweizer, who serves as president of the Government Accountability Institute, contends that Biden's attitude towards the Chinese government is because his family sees them as business partner. He joins me now via Skype to expand on this. Peter Schweizer is also the author of Secret Empires: How the American Political Class Hides Corruption and Enriches Family and Friends. Thank you so much for joining me, Peter.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
So, Peter, from your New York Post op-ed, it seems to me that there are two pieces of potential corruption from Hunter Biden. One, it stems from Ukraine and a deal with Burisma, which was an energy company there. And the other is Hunter Biden's holdings in a company which has deep ties to the Chinese government and to Chinese cash. Let's start first with Ukraine. So tell us the contours of this deal and the conflict of interest that might ensnare the former vice president who's now running for president.
Yeah, it really begins in 2014. That's when Hunter Biden and his business partner, Devon Archer, joined the board of directors of this Ukrainian energy company called Burisma. Burisma is a highly controversial company. It's controlled by a Ukrainian oligarch who is notorious among oligarchs, which is saying something. And Hunter Biden basically joins the board along with his business partner, Burisma. What's curious about this is Hunter Biden has no background in Ukraine. And he has no background in energy policy. What he does have is a father who's vice president at the time, who is point person on Obama administration policy towards Ukraine. So, from my standpoint, the first question to ask is what exactly is Hunter Biden being paid for, given that he has no expertise and background in this area? The amount of money we're talking about is large. In a related court case involving Biden's business partner, Devon Archer, there were financial records that were released. And in one account alone, over just a 14-month period, Burisma poured more than $3 million into that account. So this involved a lot of money in Ukraine in and of and by itself.
Right. And so going deeper into that deal, Burisma was actually, I think, under investigation or implicated in a corruption scandal. And so the former vice president was actually involved, and the Hill's own John Solomon has discussed this with the Ukrainian officials himself, showing that there might have been political interference and that Hunter Biden benefited from the former vice president's interference in the Ukrainian internal politics, asking for the firing of the prosecutor. Can you explain the implication of that circumstance?
Yes, so we know that Joe Biden flew to Ukraine a lot. He was point person for the distribution of Western aid, and he was heavily involved in sort of sending messages to Ukraine on a variety of issues, one of which was his public statement that he wanted the chief prosecutor investigator of Ukraine, Mr. Shokin, fired. On the grounds that he was not sufficiently zealous in pursuing criminal investigations of corruption. I don't know Mr. Shokin, but what we do know is that at this time, Burisma was under investigation by Ukrainian authorities. And in fact, Burisma's own counsel, John Beretta, who was brought in by Hunter Biden to help them on the case, says that those investigations continued into 2016. The implication of John's reporting is that Biden wanted Shokin fired as a way of potentially to end the investigation into the company that was paying his son, Hunter Biden.
Right. And so what I have seen criticism of this is that this is a conspiracy theory. They're saying, oh, Peter Schweizer is at it again. Just the way that he got Hillary Clinton, now he's going after Joe Biden. So the main criticism that I've seen is that the timeline does not add up here. So I'd like to give you a chance to respond to those concerns.
Yeah, I mean, look, John did great reporting on the issue relating to the fire of Shokin. In my book, I focus on the fact that Hunter Biden is given millions of dollars into this account by the Ukrainian company that is highly corrupt. It involves an oligarch who wants favors from the United States, appears to get favors from the United States in terms of energy policy. That's the first question we have to ask. The second point that John raises about the firing of Shokin, the timeline does line up. And honestly, I've been a little stunned by some of the sloppy reporting by Bloomberg and others, where they're essentially quoting anonymous officials
saying that the Ukrainian investigation into Burisma was over in 2014, and the timeline doesn't work. I would encourage everybody to go to the Kiev Post, which is the major English language publication in Ukraine. They did an interview with Burisma's attorney, John Beretta, who was brought in by Hunter Biden to represent Burisma. And in a 2017 interview, he says that Ukrainian investigations into Burisma lasted well into 2016. So I would rather take the word of Burisma's attorney from a legitimate source than anonymous sources claiming the investigation was done in 2014 any time of the day. Regardless, the question has to be asked, why is the son of the vice president getting sweetheart deals from foreign oligarchs? That's the first question that has to be answered here.
Right, and this isn't the only sweetheart deal, because I want to also turn to China. And this one is particularly concerning because it involves, as I understand it, is a direct loan from the Chinese government to a company which is invested in by not only Hunter Biden, but actually the stepson of John Kerry.
Yeah, so in 2009, Hunter Biden sets up a firm called Rosemont Seneca Partners. John Kerry's stepson, Chris Hines, is an investor in that firm. He doesn't seem to have been active in any of the meetings or anything else. The other partner involved in this is Devin Archer. And Rosemont Seneca Partners lands this huge deal with the Chinese government, not with a Chinese company, not with an American company in China, with a Chinese government. And the timeline is very clear. In December of 2013, Hunter Biden travels on Air Force Two with his father while his father is meeting with Chinese officials. There are photographs about this. Nobody can dispute this fact. 10 days after they return, Hunter Biden's boutique firm, Rosemont Seneca Partners, gets a $1 billion, that's with a B, private equity deal from the Chinese government. $1 billion, it's later expanded to $1.5 billion. And I talk about this in detail in the book. This is a unique deal. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank, nobody else has this deal. It's done through the Shanghai Free Trade Zone. And so again, as with Ukraine, Hunter Biden has no background in private equity. He has no background doing business in China. Why did he get this deal? And the problem is that if you look at the criticisms that Joe Biden was facing in 2013, 2014, when he made that trip and other pronouncements on China, he was criticized by the Washington Post and others for going soft on Beijing. So the question has to be asked again, why did Hunter Biden get this sweetheart deal, and what favors were possibly given in return? That's a very simple question that I think needs to be investigated.
So to be clear, Peter, is there any evidence that the former vice president himself benefited from these deals? That's what people say, oh, well, maybe the son is shady, but it doesn't actually touch the father. As we know it, as it currently stands, is there any evidence that the former vice president either A, knew about these deals or financially benefited himself? Was he bought any assets by his son? Any sort of indicators of corruption like that?
Yeah, no, very fair question. Look, I find it hard to believe that Joe Biden and his son take a, 20-hour flight to Beijing, China, and this subject never came up. I find that ridiculous on the face of it. As to the question of whether Joe Biden personally benefited from this deal, frankly, that's irrelevant. The international bribery statutes that the United States subscribe to say that if a politician or if a politician's family member or close friend benefits, that constitutes bribery. So look, just for the same reason that I said at the beginning of the Trump administration that the Trump family members, meaning the adult kids, cannot and should not do large foreign deals, and they said that they were going to swear those off. The same thing should apply to the Bidens. And I think in this case, it's even worse because, look, you could at least make the case in the case of the Trumps that Donald Trump's children have worked in the hotel business. They were businessmen. They've done international deals. Again, Hunter Biden has no experience in any of these areas. So what I've called for simply is the Senate to ask Hunter Biden to come and testify and people look into this. We're talking about large deals and large sums of money. This is much larger than, the Billy Carter scandal in the 1970s. The dollar amounts are larger, and it involves countries like China, which are America's chief rival on the global stage.
What's the ballpark number figure so we're talking about 1 billion, 1.5 billion? Do we have any indication of what Hunter Biden's income over this period actually was?
No, we don't. I mean, that's part of the problem. I mean, one of the things I call for is that politicians of all stripes be required to disclose if their adult family members are doing foreign deals with foreign governments or foreign corporations. So in the case of Joe Biden or in the case of a Republican, they have to disclose a $500 campaign donation. They have to disclose if they have $500 in GE stock. But if their adult children land large foreign deals with foreign governments, there's no disclosure requirement, which is, in my mind, absolutely absurd.
Yeah, that is. And finally, Peter, is there any new information that you can share from us that's forthcoming from your book on Hunter Biden or any of the other candidates, including the Trump family?
Well, I think, in Secret Empires, I talk about offshoring corruption. And what I mean by that is that powerful family members of politicians in Washington, D.C. are cashing in. I talk about the deals involving Joe Biden. I also talk about the deals involving Senate Majority Mitch McConnell and his wife, Elaine Chao. And I touch on the fact that the Trumps have been targeted. The Chinese have said that one of the ways in which they want to weaken Trump's resolve on China is to cut deals with the children. These are what I call the American princelings. The Chinese have the princelings. If you want to do a deal with the Chinese government, you hire one of their kids as a consultant. They're regarded as the princelings of China. We are moving in that direction in this country on a bipartisan basis, and we need to get a hold of this quickly, or corruption is going to become rampant. This is a problem in both political parties. The Biden case is, I think, particularly egregious because of his position and the fact that Hunter Biden had no background, really no business getting these deals in the first place.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, Peter. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we have more Rising continuing after this.
Pretty compelling testimony there from Peter Schweizer, Larry, revealing a huge loophole.
Well, it's even more than a loophole. And Peter Schweizer is absolutely right. It's both political parties. We're not going to spare the Republicans here either. First on deck will be Mitch McConnell after we're finished with Biden and also the border situation. But there's very important information that is provided there. But in addition, we have a later book that was written by Peter Schweizer, Profiles in Corruption, which Jason's going to read the first chapter with regard to the Bidens. And I want to point out as well, we have that testimony. This is super important, of Tony Bobulinski. This followed Schweizer's revelations, where Bobulinski confirmed, you saw that, confirmed, because he was the partner of Hunter Biden and James Biden for a while until he decided he'd get out. Obviously he got cold feet. He didn't want to be involved with this, but that Joe Biden was getting a 10% cut. And you can probably, through circumstantial evidence, believe he was getting more than that as well. So this is what we're dealing with. And this is why the government is so corrupt on both sides of the aisle. And it's the serious situation that we now find ourselves in. And then, of course, ask yourself the question, where was our Justice Department? Where was Congress? They're all part of it. They're all complicit in this. Just yesterday it was revealed that Bill Barr ordered an investigation of Representative Matt Gaetz in Florida, Goetz or whatever his name is, Goetz. Maybe he's a goat, I don't know. But for alleged trafficking in an underage woman across state lines. Now, whether or not Representative Matt Gaetz is liable for that, is guilty, remains to be seen. But why is it he's ordering that when he totally ignores what's going on with the Bidens, McConnell, and others? Because he's part of the Washington Club. Matt Gaetz is not powerful enough for him to look the other way. But when you get these powerful figures in Washington, they all protect each other. And of course, then we have the National Security Agency and the CIA and the FBI layered on top of that, and they've got dirt on everybody in Washington that they could use. So that's why nothing happens. And this continues on. We are as corrupt as any country in this world, and the American people need to face up to it. And that's why we're doing these citizen grand juries. So I'm going to now ask Jason to read the first chapter of Profiles in Corruption by Peter Schweizer. This was a later edition of his work. It's very important, and we have a great debt of gratitude to owe to Peter Schweizer for revealing this, but it was confirmed by Tony Bobulinski directly, in person.
Yeah, and before I proceed with that, Larry, I want to remind our viewers that we can't do these citizens' grand juries without their support. People can go to freedomwatchusa.org. And you know, Larry, I just want to also further clarify that when people donate $50 or more, they're going to get an actual copy of the book, Forget the Scandal Industry. It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry. And it is a paperback version of the book, correct, Larry? It's not an e-book or anything like that.
Yeah, that's correct. That would be but you can.
Let me jump in and say that
no, not right now. Not right now.
There's an echo. I can't understand what Jason is saying.
Okay. Thank you for that.
I'm sorry. So can't understand what I'm saying. Let me address that. I think I have a solution to that.
Thank you for letting us know, grand juror.
Okay, I think that should fix it. Can you still hear me?
That's great. Thank you.
So, Jason, let's roll the videotape, so to speak. This is a book that you're going to.
This is going to be spoken word right here. This is from Peter Schweizer's Profiles in Corruption. Whoop. All right, so here we go. Gritty Joe Biden from Scranton, Pennsylvania, has been part of America's political life since 1972. When at just age 29, he was elected to the U.S. Senate. America watched Joe Biden bury his first wife and daughter following a tragic automobile accident right after his election and shortly before Christmas. America's heart went out to him again as Vice President Biden buried another child, son Beau Biden, when he died from brain cancer in 2015. Joe Biden has been on the stage, sometimes in a lead role, in every major national political drama since Watergate. As he recounts in his memoir, as a United States Senator, I've watched and played some part in history. The Vietnam War, Watergate, the Iran hostage crisis, the Bork nomination, the fall of the Berlin Wall, the reunification of Germany, the disintegration of the Soviet Union, 9/11, 2 wars in Iraq, a presidential impeachment, a presidential resignation, and a presidential election decided by the Supreme Court. Although not as ideological as some, he has largely remained a progressive Democrat to his core. To any American paying attention to politics, Biden was a familiar figure even before becoming Barack Obama's choice for vice president in 2008. In part, this was because he had served as the longtime chairman of 2 powerful Senate committees, Foreign Relations and Judiciary. So, as Selena Zito notes, we really have seen Biden's career unfold on television. At least we have seen the television-friendly portions of Joe Biden's political career unfold. Other aspects involving his family's complex and obscured international deals, leveraged on Joe's political status and power, have rarely been explored. The Biden family partners are often foreign governments, where the deals occur in the dark corners of international finance, like Kazakhstan, China, Costa Rica, Jamaica, Ukraine, and Russia. Some deals have even involved U.S. taxpayer money. The cast of characters includes sketchy companies, violent convicted felons, foreign oligarchs, and other people who typically expect favors in return. Joe's public power positions Biden family members for highly lucrative deals they likely would not otherwise get. These deals also often occur with the appearance that Joe Biden has done favors for the partners who welcome such family members. These are not a few disparate enterprises, but rather money-making ventures that appear to be part of a well-organized family business. Joe Biden has insisted in absolute terms that he never discusses family members' business activities. The Biden family's apparent self-enrichment depends on Joe Biden's political influence and involves no less than 5 family members: Joe's son Hunter, daughter Ashley, brothers James and Frank, and his sister Valerie. When the subject came up in 2019, he declared, "I never talked with my son or my brother or anyone else, even distant family, about their business interests, period." As we will see, this is an impossibility. Biden's political identity rests on his hardscrabble and humble roots, which create the impression that both he and his family are not interested in money. As one admiring newspaperman puts it, Biden sweats humanity. Still, he does not necessarily like pedestrian labels. "I'm always labeled as the middle-class Joe," he groused in 2014. In this town, this is not a compliment. It means you are not sophisticated. The Bidens started out in blue-collar Scranton, Pennsylvania, but in the face of financial hardship moved to Delaware when he was still young. After first attending the University of Delaware and then law school at Syracuse University, he jumped almost immediately into politics. By the age of 27, Joe was running for Newcastle County Council in Delaware. From the beginning, Joe's political career was a family affair. His younger brothers James and Frank organized a volunteer army of young people who worked the strong Democratic precincts. When he ran for the U.S. Senate just 2 years later, James, then just 21 years old, was his finance chairman. His sister Valerie was his campaign manager. She would go on to lead every one of his political campaigns over the next 3 decades until his vice presidential run with Barack Obama. From his earliest foray into politics to the present day, Biden's political life has been fused with his family. From the beginning, the Biden family, as one admiring biographer puts it, formed the nucleus for Joe Biden's political operations. The notion of family was deeply embedded in the Biden psyche in an early age. "The single best thing I learned from my father is," Joe's son Hunter once said, "family comes first over everything." This otherwise admirable character quality crosses the line into corruption when political position and vested power become the locomotive of the family money train. Love of family is not a legitimate excuse for the abuse of power. The 1972 run for the U.S. Senate was pivotal. Young and little known, Joe was elected to the Newcastle County Council just 2 years earlier. That made him an unusual commodity. In a 1974 interview, he described his situation in terms that he now probably regrets. "I'm like the token black or the token woman," he explained on the PBS program The Advocates. "I was the token young person. I'm a 29-year-old oddball. The only reason I was able to raise the money is that I was able to have a national constituency to run for office because I was 29. Biden was remarkably candid in that interview about raising money and his willingness to, quote, prostitute himself to do it. You run the risk of deciding whether or not you're going to prostitute yourself to give the answer you know they want to hear in order to get funded to run for that office," he explained. "I went to the big guys for the money. I was ready to prostitute myself in the manner in which I talk about it, but what happened was they said, 'Come back when you're 40, son.'" Despite those early struggles, Biden was able to raise $276,000 for the Senate campaign, a significant sum in 1972 for an election in a small state like Delaware. Much of the coordination work was done by his brother James, who as finance chairman worked to enlist the support of national unions, political leaders, and financiers around the country. Joe's opponent was Congressman J. Caleb Boggs, a two-term Republican incumbent for the state of Delaware. He was a World War II veteran who had earned endorsements from Labor. In 1972, Joe beat him, winning a close election by 3,000 votes out of 230,000 cast statewide. Thus began his 36 years as a U.S. Senator until he became Vice President. Weeks after his 1972 electoral victory and entrance into the stage of national politics, tragedy struck when, as mentioned earlier, his wife and daughter were killed in a car crash. His two sons were injured. His sister Valerie moved in to help with his boys, Hunter and Beau. Joe would commute home to Delaware from Washington almost every day on Amtrak to be home with them. Riding the rails would become a powerful symbol of Six-Pack Joe. According to Biden, he had made more than 8,000 trips on Amtrak, although not always in the commuter car. I can say this now, since they can't do anything about it. I used to ride in the cab a lot with the engineers. If he was running late, Biden pulled rank. On many days, he would call the train conductor, and the train would be held until Joe came aboard. Other rail commuters would just have to wait. The clouds parted in Joe's personal life a few years later when his younger brother Frank gave him a phone number and suggested he call a girl named Jill. The two had met at school. "You'll like her, Joe," Frank said. "She doesn't like politics." Joe and Jill quickly became serious, and it was clear that this was going somewhere. The family noticed, and brothers James and Frank took her to dinner for some straight talk. "They told me," Jill later recalled, "it was a dream of this family that Joe would be president. And did I have a problem with that?" The dinner was a testament to how the family viewed its fortunes as being tied to Joe's political rise. Clearly, Biden's political career was very much a family operation. In 1988, when Joe was running for president, he looked to be a favorite, but his campaign was derailed by allegations that he had plagiarized a speech from British politician Neil Kinnock. With the campaign in crisis, his wife Jill, brothers Frank and James, sister Valerie, and his parents and his children all gathered around Joe. The choice to withdraw from the race was a family decision. A Catholic priest married Joe and Jill in 1977 in a ceremony held in the United Nations Chapel in New York City. They had a daughter, Ashley, in 1981. As the kids grew, they moved into a mansion once owned by the DuPont Company in Greenville, Delaware. For the next 3 decades, Senator Joe Biden became a Washington fixture, accumulating a progressive voting record on a wide variety of issues. Other aspects of his voting record suggest the pull of his family's commercial interests. Senator Biden pushed for the passage of a new bankruptcy law that put him out of step with most of his Democratic Party colleagues. He voted against a bill that would require credit card companies to provide better warnings about the perils of making only minimum monthly payments. He was only one of 5 Democrats to do so. During the same period between 2001 and 2005, son Hunter was receiving consulting fees from the MBNA Corporation, a major Delaware bank and credit card company. While sitting on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Senator Biden also worked hard on legislation to deal with asbestos damage lawsuits. It just so happened that son Beau was working for a Wilmington, Delaware law firm that was handling asbestos litigation cases. In 2001, son Hunter jumped in with both feet when he became a lobbyist with the firm Oldeker, Biden, and Bel Air, LLP, with offices on Connecticut Avenue, just blocks from the White House. The founder, William Oldeker, also served as a legal advisor to Joe Biden. The boutique firm specialized in appropriations, lobbying, which meant shaking money loose from the federal government for their clients. They represented lawyers, American Indians, as well as healthcare industry. It was located in the same office as the National Group lobbying firm, also run by Oldeker, whose clients included the University of Delaware. Part of their job was submitting targeted spending items called earmarks to Biden's office. The arrangement seemed to work quite well until 2006, when the Senate passed an ethics bill requiring senators to verify in writing that they or their families would not benefit from spending items or earmarks that they were pushing. Hunter had to shift gears and leave the appropriations lobbying game. However, Hunter was not done with other types of lobbying. An online gambling company run out of Gibraltar named Party Gaming was under federal scrutiny. The Department of Justice had issued subpoenas to more than a dozen banks working with the company. The company needed help in Washington and hired Hunter Biden to lobby on their behalf. It probably did not hurt that his father was the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and a senior member of the Senate Judiciary Committee with oversight of the Department of Justice. In 2008, Hunter eventually dropped his lobbying clients when his dad was announced as Obama's running mate. Months later, a co-founder of Party Gaming pleaded guilty to violating the Wire Act and agreed to pay a $300 million fine to the U.S. government. During his years in the Senate, Biden's family benefited financially in other ways as he leveraged political power. Joe's sister Valerie ran all of his Senate campaigns as well as his presidential runs in 1988 and 2008, but she was also senior partner in a political messaging firm named Joe Slade White and Company. The only two executives listed at the firm were Joe Slade White and Valerie. The firm received large fees from the Biden campaigns and that Valerie was running. $2.5 million in consulting fees flowed to her firm from Citizens for Biden and Biden for President, Inc. during the 2008 presidential bid alone. Keep in mind that Joe Slade White and Company worked for Biden campaigns over 18 years. When Barack Obama selected Joe Biden as his running mate in 2008, it boosted the Biden family fortunes to another level. Now, suddenly, there were opportunities on a global scale. The executive branch offered an abundance of power to leverage, and the value of the Biden family's commercial deals, especially those of Hunter, James, and Frank, would skyrocket. With the election of his father as vice president, Hunter Biden launched businesses fused to his father's power that led him to lucrative deals with a rogues gallery of governments and oligarchs around the world. Sometimes he would hitch a prominent ride with his father aboard Air Force Two to visit a country where he was courting business. Other times, the deals would be done more discreetly. Always they involved foreign entities that appeared to be seeking something from his father. Often, the countries in question, including Ukraine, Russia, and Kazakhstan, had highly corrupt political cultures. In short, Hunter Biden was not cutting business deals in Japan or Great Britain, where disclosure rules and corporate governance might require greater scrutiny. These were deals in the truly dark corners of the world. In 2009, Hunter established a series of small investment vehicles with his friend and business partner, Devon Archer. Biden and Archer had been at Yale University together. They launched Rosemont Seneca Partners in partnership with Rosemont Capital, an investment vehicle backed by the Heinz family. Chris Heinz, stepson of then Senator John Kerry, had been roommates with with Archer at Yale. Clearly, this would be an extremely well-connected firm in Washington, D.C. As I recounted in my previous book, Secret Empires, on December 4th, 2013, Hunter was riding on Air Force Two with his father to Beijing, China. For Vice President Joe Biden, effective diplomacy was about forming personal relationships with foreign leaders. It all gets down to the conduct of foreign policy being personal. The vice president had a series of important and tense meetings with Chinese officials on a variety of critical matters in the bilateral relationship. The trip coincided with an enormous financial deal that Hunter Biden's firm Rosemont Seneca was arranging with the state-owned Bank of China. What Hunter did during the official visit to Beijing, we cannot know for sure. Other than a few photo ops with his father, he was nowhere to be seen. After the publication of Secret Empires, Hunter Biden, through an attorney, claimed to ABC News that he did no business during his visit to Beijing aboard Air Force Two. However, a Beijing-based company representative later claimed that Hunter Biden had introduced his Chinese business partner, Jonathan Lee, to his father during the visit. Approximately 10 days after the Beijing trip, Hunter Biden's Rosemont Seneca partners finalized a deal with the Chinese government worth a whopping $1 billion. The deal was later expanded to $1.5 billion. As of this writing, the fund's website says its investments amount to more than $2 billion. It is important to note that this deal with the Chinese government, not with a Chinese company, which means the Chinese government and the son of the vice president were now business partners. What they created was a joint venture called Bohai Harvest, RST, BHR. The name reflected who was involved. The RS was a reference to Rosemont Seneca. The T was the Thornton Group, a small U.S. investment firm that did business in China. It was a very unusual arrangement. The most powerful financial institution in China, the Bank of China, was setting up a joint venture with Rosemont Seneca partners. BHR touted its unique Sino-U.S. shareholding structure, as well as the fact that it was backed by the Chinese government. Hunter Biden actively cultivated these deals. He had visited China twice before, in 2010 and 2011, to meet with senior Chinese government officials in finance. But he had no background in China, and other than a very brief and unsuccessful attempt to run a hedge fund with his uncle, no background in private equity. When the Chinese government's BHR was established, Hunter Biden was given a slot on the board of directors, supposedly unpaid while his father was vice president. His actual compensation cannot be known. It is confidential. Since Secret Empires was released in 2018, Hunter has claimed that he only received compensation from the Chinese after his father left the vice presidency in January 2017. He further claimed it came in the form of a 10% equity stake in the Bohai Harvest Financial Management Company. Whether his claim is accurate or not is impossible to know. It cannot be independently verified. Furthermore, he has misled reporters about the Chinese deal in the past. Even if his account is accurate, that his compensation was deferred, it does not really make a difference. Deferred compensation from a Chinese government entity is still direct compensation from a Chinese government entity. He has never explained why he got this great opportunity from them in the first place. BHR, with Hunter Biden on the board of directors and Devin Archer as the vice chairman and investment committee member, engaged in a series of financial deals that served the strategic interests of Beijing. In one of their first deals, the firm took an ownership stake in China General Nuclear Power Corporation, CGN, a nuclear energy company. The company was charged in 2016 with espionage against the United States. Also charged was an engineer who stole nuclear secrets from the United States. BHR also helped buy out the American precision machining company Henniges. They bought the company in a joint deal with the Aviation Industry Corporation of China, AVIC, a military contractor owned by the Chinese government. Because Henniges technology has military application and therefore national security implications, the deal had to be approved by an interagency committee made up of Obama-Biden administration officials. BHR also invested in military-related technology companies closer to home. They bought a stake in Face++, a major developer of facial recognition software commonly used in a phone application made by the Chinese government for surveillance of its own population. BHR was the first of a series of business relationships that Hunter Biden established with the Chinese government or Chinese government-connected entities. Another Hunter Biden-linked firm called Rosemont Realty struck a deal with a Chinese government-connected company in 2014. Hunter was an advisor for and the co-founder of the company, which owned commercial real estate properties around the United States. Just as he had little or no background in private equity, Hunter also had no background in real estate. Rosemont Realty openly touted its ties to Vice President Joe Biden. In a Rosemont Realty company prospectus for investors watermarked confidential, there was the key consideration that Hunter Biden, son of the vice president, is on the advisory board. Better yet, Rosemont Realty had other political connections beyond Hunter Biden. Rosemont Realty was headed by Daniel Burrell, a Yale grad who had worked on the John Kerry 2004 presidential campaign. A major investor in Rosemont Realty was an entity called Rosemont Real Estate Group, LLC. Who exactly owns Rosemont Real Estate Group, GP, is unclear. However, in Securities and Exchange Commission filings, the firm lists its address as that of the Hines family office in Pittsburgh and shares a phone number with Rosemont Capital in New York City. At the time of Rosemont Realty's arrangement with the Chinese firm, John Kerry, married to Hines' heir Teresa Hines Kerry, was the U.S. Secretary of State. Just about a year after the massive deal with the Chinese government's Bohai Harvest, another Hunter Biden firm struck a pact with another Chinese government-linked firm called Gemini Investments. This deal involved a multi-billion-dollar investment with Rosemont Realty. Who exactly is Gemini Investments? While Gemini is a publicly traded stock in Hong Kong, it is ultimately an indirect subsidiary under the control of a Chinese conglomerate called Sino-Ocean Group, formerly Sino-Ocean Land. Gemini Investments Director and Honorary Chairman is Li Ming. His corporate and political ties in Beijing go to the highest levels of the Communist Party. Indeed, he served several times running as a member of the Chinese Communist Party's elite People's Political Consultative Conference. Before the name change, Sino-Ocean Land was one of the largest real estate companies in Beijing. And it is directly connected to a company called China Ocean Shipping Company, COSCO. Formerly, the 1961 COSCO is formed in 1961. COSCO is the state-owned company with strong organizational links to the Chinese Navy. By December 2014, Gemini Investments inked the new partnership with Rosemont Realty, under which they would acquire an interest in the company and its underlying properties. 8 months later, the newly christened Gemini Rosemont announced its plans for $3 billion worth of new acquisitions. In short, Hunter Biden was involved in $2 billion deals with the Chinese government-connected firms in a 20-month period while his dad was vice president of the United States. Hunter was apparently eager to strike other deals with the Chinese business, implicitly leveraged on who his father was. Considering the case of Patrick Ho, who was arrested in late 2017 by federal agents in New York for money laundering and violating the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, Ho was an assistant to Chinese oil tycoon Yi Jianming, who ran the energy company CEFC. The company has strong ties to the Chinese military. Hunter Biden would later admit Yi sent him a large diamond after one of their meetings. Biden says that he did not keep it. Ho was also the Secretary General of the nonprofit China Energy Fund Committee, which many observers view as a government-directed entity. In March 2019, Ho was jailed in the U.S. on bribery charges stemming from oil deals in Africa. According to the New York Times, it appears that Ho's first phone call while in the custody of U.S. officials was an attempt to reach Hunter Biden. CEFC officials had met multiple times with Hunter Biden beginning back in 2015. In May 2017, Hunter met with Ho in Miami, where they reportedly discussed joint energy and infrastructure deals in the United States. The night of his arrest, Ho called James Biden, Joe's brother. Why Ho had James Biden's number is not clear. According to James Biden, the call was a surprise. He believed Ho was trying to contact Hunter, so he gave him his nephew's number. During Ho's trial, prosecutors presented evidence that he was an arms dealer on the side, running guns to conflict zones around the world. He was sentenced to 3 years in jail. If, in fact, Ho did intend for his first call while in custody to reach the son of the former vice president, it speaks volumes about how juiced in Hunter Biden was with some Chinese officials. While with Hunter's deals in China, Joe Biden's attitude toward China seemed to soften. In 2011, the Obama administration announced a strategic shift called the Asia Pivot, based on the idea that the main military and strategic challenges facing the United States are emanating from China. The Obama administration shifted military resources toward Asia, yet Biden continued to strike a relatively soft posture toward Beijing, much to the chagrin of U.S. allies in the region. He continued to minimize the challenges posed by China. In the spring of 2019, while on the campaign trail. "Come on, man," Biden said. "They're not bad folks. But guess what? They're not competition for us." Hunter Biden's foreign deals were not limited to China. As strategically generous as that country was to the vice president's son, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and even Russia offered him other wealth opportunities. Ukraine boasts an abundance of energy resources, especially oil and natural gas. Burisma, a top Ukrainian natural gas producer, has deep political ties in the country. It was created in 2006 by Mykola Zlochevsky and has a Cypriot registration. He became the Ecology and Natural Resources Minister under the pro-Russian government of Viktor Yanukovych. As Natural Resources Minister, Zlochevsky conveniently gave himself licenses to develop abundant natural gas fields. His oversight allowed Burisma to become the second largest private natural gas company in the country. They currently rank first. As previously noted in Secret Empires, on April 16, 2014, Devon Archer made a private visit to the White House for a meeting with Joe Biden. The day prior, Burisma had deposited more than $112,000 into a Rosemont bank account marked C.O. Devin Archer. 6 days later, on April 22nd, it was announced that Archer was joining the board of directors of Burisma. In short succession, on May 13th, it was announced that Hunter Biden would join the Burisma board too. Neither one had any background or experience in the energy sector, or in Ukraine for that matter. We now know, based on financial records, that each man appears to have been paid $83,333.33 per month by Burisma, or a total of $1 million per year. The timing of their appointment to the Burisma board and the payments is more than interesting. The day before Archer's official appointment on April 21st, Vice President Biden landed in Kiev for meetings with Ukrainian officials, bringing with him terms for a United States Agency of International Development, USAID, program to assist the Ukrainian natural gas industry. Even in a country abounding with corruption, Burisma stands out. Burisma's founder, Zlochevsky, was in legal crosshairs when Biden and Archer joined the company board. By February 2016, Ukrainian authorities seized Zlochevsky's property on suspicion that he was engaged in illicit enrichment. Zlochevsky found himself on Ukraine's wanted list and fled the country. The Ukrainian Prosecutor General's office seized Burisma's gas wells. Tax authorities began investigating him for suspicion of tax evasion. Hunter Biden used his contacts in Washington to help Zlochevsky in his corruption case. Burisma hired a former Obama Department of Justice lawyer named John Beretta and Blue Star Strategies, a consulting firm run by former Clinton administration officials, to help. Beretta would later recount how he interacted directly with Ukrainian prosecutors with the expressed purpose of getting the charges dropped. According to Beretta, the charges were dismissed in September of 2016. Under pressure from Joe Biden, Ukrainian officials fired the Ukrainian prosecutor who was investigating Burisma. Joe Biden later bragged that he had the prosecutor fired by threatening to withhold $1 billion in U.S. aid assistance to Ukraine. On January 16, 2017, Air Force Two descended toward Boryspil International Airport, just southeast of Kiev. It was Joe Biden's last foreign trip as vice president. Under Biden's direction, the Obama administration had poured some $3 billion into the country. 4 days before Biden arrived, Burisma announced that the Ukrainian government's prosecutors had ended the criminal investigations into the company and its founder, Zlochevsky. There is no complete public record of Hunter Biden's foreign financial deals while his father was vice president, because neither he nor any other members of the Biden family beyond Joe and Jill had any federal disclosure requirements of their finances. However, court documents, including financial records from a trial involving Hunter's business partner Devin Archer, offer some tantalizing clues involving other deals Hunter Biden made around the world during the time his father was vice president. A Morgan Stanley investment account from which Hunter regularly received funds shows money arriving from mysterious sources around the world. There's a $142,300 deposit in April 2014 from Kazakh oligarch-controlled Novartis Holdings. Kenji's Ishev, whose father-in-law is the former vice prime minister of Kazakhstan and a close ally of Kazakh dictator Nur Sultan Nazarbayev, runs the offshore firm. In August 2014, $1.2 million arrived into the account from an anonymous LLC via a small Swiss bank called BSI-SA. In 2016, BSI was one of several companies that were part of an embezzlement and money laundering investigation spanning 10 countries and at least $4.2 billion in irregular transactions. The financial documents also demonstrate that someone in the Biden family has other LLCs set up to receive payments. In August 2015, for example, $150,000 was transferred into an account controlled by something called MFTCG Holdings, LLC Biden. It is unclear what that account is or who controls it. In another corporate record released as part of the court trial, Devon Archer describes a financial relationship with Russian oligarch Yelena Baturina, a billionaire with extensive political connections in Moscow and notorious links to Russian organized crime. Archer said Baturina invested $200 million into various investment funds with which he was involved. Not all of Hunter Biden's wealth accumulation during his father's vice presidency was international. Some deals occurred within the United States and benefited from taxpayer dollars steered by his father's closest aides. Considering the case of something called M. Bloom, a joint venture that Hunter Biden and Devon Archer set up in Hawaii. M. Bloom was a public-private partnership in which Hunter's firm invested $5 million, and the other half came from the Hawaii Strategic Development Corporation. But where did HSDC get its money for M. Bloom? It came from a program back in Washington, D.C. called the Treasury Department State Small Business Credit Initiative. $3 million of the HSDC money came from the program, which was run by a longtime Biden aide named Don Graves. It is hard to find someone tighter in the Biden orbit than Graves. Over the course of his career, he had served as a counselor to Vice President Biden, his domestic and economic policy director, and his traveling chief of staff. After Joe Biden left the White House, he appointed Graves to the Policy Advisory Board of the Biden Institute. The bottom line is that Hunter Biden's joint venture with M. Bloom was partly funded by taxpayer dollars through a program run by his father's longtime aide. Things ultimately did not go well for M. Bloom. Almost immediately, the company became embroiled in an ethics scandal when it was revealed that the two men running the fund were steering dollars to their own companies. Beyond his numerous Rosemont-branded entities and ventures like M. Bloom, Hunter was also deeply involved with a troubling entity called Burham Financial Group, where his business partner Devon Archer also sat on the board of directors. As they had with Rosemont, Hunter Biden and Devon Archer used Burham to make foreign deals with governments and oligarchs, including Nurlan Abduov, an associate of Kazakh oligarch Kengiz Rikashev. As mentioned, Rikashev is the son-in-law of the former vice prime minister of Kazakhstan. His father-in-law, Imangali Tazmagambetov, was also formerly the defense minister of the country and is now the Kazakh ambassador to Russia. Kazakhstan is an important country not only for its vast energy resources, but also because of its geostrategic position. The financial ties between this foreign government and Biden appear to go deeper than just the investment in Burnham. As one business associate put it in an email released at the court trial, Rosemont is deeply involved in Kazakhstan. The SWF, Sovereign Wealth Fund of Kazakhstan, is involved with Rosemont Seneca Technology Partners, Rosemont's technology investment vehicle. Between the Rosemont entities and Burnham, Biden and Archer's business dealings in Kazakhstan were extensive. Although specific financial data remains undisclosed, I think that might be the last page of the excerpts here, Larry.
Okay, good. Let me just show everyone, because we're going to make available to you that in writing. This is the book that Jason was reading from. It was published in 2020, so it's very, very recent. And this was the other one, Secret Empires, which was published in 2018. Peter Schweizer identifies the dates of his different publications. So we will be making all of that available for the grand jury to read before we reconvene next Thursday at the same time. I want to point a few things out, and Jason's going to read a few excerpts from a Senate report. We're not going to read the whole thing because we're going to make that available to you as well, and then we'll summarize it. But what's very important here is to realize that all this information, as I said before, has been out into the public domain. It's never been refuted by Joe Biden or anybody else, Hunter Biden, Frank Biden, James Biden, whatever. Instead, what we heard from Joe Biden, we'll play you a clip of this next time as well, was Hunter Biden is the smartest person I know. Yes, he's smarter, right? He knew how to capitalize. But this is something that is endemic, as Peter Schweizer points out, to Washington, D.C. and state capitals throughout this country. This country perhaps may be one of the most corrupt countries in the world in terms of influence peddling. And the reason that the Republicans won't touch this, they'll do a Senate report, but it's only for show. Get themselves on Hannity or get themselves to raise money, but they don't follow up. They hope that that's going to placate the American people, because the Republicans are doing similar things, like McConnell. And maybe not to this scale, but they're doing it. And I know that hearkening back to when I ran Judicial Watch, and I triggered in large part the Chinagate scandal, which was pumping money into the Clintons, and we'll get to the Clintons too, is that when the Republicans held hearings on that, the Democrats were able to dig up dirt on them dealing with China as well. And they all went away. And instead they passed campaign finance legislation. It's a lot like saying to O.J. Simpson, let's pass legislation so you don't kill again. Let's forget about Nicole Simpson. You won't kill again. In fact, the Supreme Court invalidated most of that legislation, which was called the McCain-Feingold bill, and then Act. So this is what you're dealing with here. And I remind you that the standard in front of a grand jury is that evidence doesn't even have to be admissible in court. Grand jury is convened, as Justice Scalia said, on mere suspicion. We'll be seeking indictments based on probable cause, which is a very low standard. And these alleged criminals will have the opportunity, if you decide to indict them, and I will recommend that indictment, to appear in front of a citizen's trial and to answer these questions. But you can bet they won't. But we will proceed in any event. And this is why you have in this country right now two political parties that are corrupt to the core. Okay, one is trying to socialize, communize, and atheize this country, and another one that sits there and watches it all going on and does nothing because everybody knows what everybody else is doing, and it's corrupt to the core. And I might add one other point. This is why people entered the Capitol on January 6th. Most of them were peaceful. Most of them were not criminals. And it's why Biden and Harris have sent out the FBI, misusing the FBI. I'm sure the agents resent this, using it as a Gestapo to scare people from rising up and questioning it, and taking action. But we're not afraid. And our founding fathers were not afraid. If they risked their lives, they pledged their sacred honors and their fortunes. Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, even with inflation, after 244 years would be millionaires even today. They risked it all because they knew that future generations were at stake. And as another founding father, as I've said many times before, said, John Adams, doesn't matter how many times you change your rulers or forms of government, without ethics, morality, and religion, you will not have a lasting liberty. Corruption destroys the civilization, much like cancer will destroy the body. And we have a cancer right now of both political parties. But the fact is, the one in power, the one sitting upon by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, is that these people have been bought and paid for, not just by foreign powers, but by American special interest groups in this country. And that also explains the judges that we have on the federal bench in particular. Jefferson said, and this is why I write about it in my book, it takes a revolution, forget the scandal industry. You can see my other books up there on the wall right now, the cover, an article that was written in the Washington Post about me, Larry Klayman versus everyone. You know why it's everyone? Because they're all corrupt and they all complicit because they don't take action. And we've seen that. No justice at the high level in my lifetime. And I'm going to be 70 in July. At least I've lived a while and I've seen it. 44 years as a lawyer. No justice at the high level. Nobody at the high level has ever been held accountable. And look at John Kerry. Apparently his family was involved as well. We're going to look into what he did. You know, the Heinz brand says 57 varieties. 57 varieties of what? I think we can probably figure it out. So this is what we're dealing with and why what you're doing is so important. And we're trying to educate the American people that our justice system belongs to us, the American people, and we must take it back. We cannot live with this anymore because it's destroying the country. It has destroyed the country already. And Democrats and Republicans are corrupt to the core. So Jason's going to read you the Senate report, but it was for show. It wasn't for dough. They didn't follow up. They did nothing. And neither did the Attorney General of the United States under Trump, or for that matter, anybody else. So here's what we're doing. And here's why we will succeed at what we're doing, because the American people are getting smart. And American people are not going to take it anymore. Peacefully and legally, we will take this country back with the grace of the Father and the Son. So Jason, read a few portions. We'll reconvene next Thursday. We'll complete this. We'll present the indictments. It'll be tailored to the evidence that's been submitted, the information that's been submitted. We will make the writings of Peter Schweizer available in the interim of the Senate report, which basically mirrors what Peter Schweizer uncovered and others uncovered. And we will also replay portions of Tony Bobolinsky's testimony, in effect, in cable news, because he closes the loop. Eyewitness testimony that Joe Biden participated in this bribery scheme along with his brothers and other family members. And at a minimum, he was going to get 10% of billions of dollars.
So Larry, this is the majority staff report, Supplemental Committee on Finance, Committee on Homeland Security and Government Affairs from November 18th, 2020. On September 23rd, 2020, the Senate Committee on Finance and the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs released a majority staff report entitled Hunter Biden, Burisma, and Corruption: The Impact on U.S. Government Policy and Related Concerns. After the report was issued, new sources went public, and additional information about business relationships and financial arrangements among and between the Biden family and their business associates, including several foreign nationals. In particular, some of that information concerned John Robinson Walker, Rob Walker, and his company, Robinson Walker, LLC. The new information is consistent with other records within the committee's possession, which show millions of dollars being transferred from a Chinese entity linked to the Communist Party to Robinson Walker, LLC. Those transactions are described in more detail herein. Robinson Walker LLC is controlled by Hunter Biden's longtime business associate, Rob Walker. Walker appears to have been associated with at least 3 companies connected to Hunter Biden: Oldicker Biden and Bel Air LLP, Seneca Global Advisors, and Rosemont Seneca Advisors. Hunter Biden was a founding partner at Oldicker Biden and Bel Air LLP, and he reportedly maintained an ownership stake in Seneca Global Advisors. Hunter Biden reportedly served as chairman of Rosemont Seneca Advisors, and Walker reportedly served as managing director. In October 2020, Tony Bobulinski came forward with a series of public statements and interviews in which he described his personal experience working with the Biden family and their associates, including Walker. When Bobulinski publicly disclosed his relationship with the Biden family, he also disclosed information about Walker's connection to the Biden family. For example, in a May 21, 2017 WhatsApp message that Bobulinski produced to the committee, Walker told Bobulinski that he was the owner of Robinson Walker LLC and confirmed that it was a single-member LLC based in Delaware. Rob Walker stated, I have an LLC, Robinson Walker LLC. Don't really know the pros and cons. Let's do Robinson Walker LLC if not too late. Tony Bobulinski replied, inquiring, it's a single-member Delaware LLC? Walker responds, yes. Other WhatsApp exchanges between Walker and Bobulinski demonstrate a close working relationship between Walker and the Biden family. In a May 22, 2017 WhatsApp message from Walker to Bobulinski, Walker provided James Biden's contact information to Bobulinski for inclusion in a corporate agreement. Tony Bobulinski says, please DocuSign the O agreement and herd up H and Jim. Rob Walker replies, Jim is, address redacted, Marion Station, PA 19066. Tony Bobulinski replies, thanks, James has signed it. We are waiting on you, 3. I need it signed, so when I get confirmation from China, we can execute. During an interview with Tucker Carlson that aired on Fox News, Bobulinski stated, after Carlson asks, let me ask you to pause. Will you explain to us who Rob Walker is? Bobulinski replied, yes. Rob Walker was a partner in Rosemont Seneca. He had a very close relationship with the Biden family and had developed and had been working with James Gilliar throughout 2015 and 2016 to develop this deal with the Chinese and CEFC. Carlson goes on to ask, what was his relationship with the Biden family? Bobulinski replies, so my understanding is Rob had worked in prior administrations and had a very, very close relationship. In fact, in Rob Walker's own words, in an email to me, he states that, everyone was contributing or telling me how they wanted to participate in Sinohawk. And in an email, he basically states in his own words to me, I want to continue acting as a proxy for Hunter Biden, Jim Biden, and the Bidens around the world. In a May 15th, 2017 email from Walker to Bobulinski, Walker explained to Bobulinski that in the context of their financial relationship, he saw himself as, quote, being a surrogate for H or Jim when gauging opportunities. In this email, H appears to refer to Hunter Biden, and Jim appears to refer to Joe Biden's brother, James Biden. According to records on file with the committees, on February 23, 2017 and March 1, 2017, a Shanghai-based company called State Energy HK Limited sent 2 wires, each in the amount of $3 million, to a bank account for Robinson Walker LLC. The records note that it is unclear what the true purpose is behind these transactions and who the ultimate beneficiary is. These transactions are a direct link between Walker and the Communist Chinese government, and because of his close association with Hunter Biden, yet another tie between Hunter Biden's financial arrangements and the Communist Chinese government. At the time of the transfers, State Energy HK Limited was affiliated with CEFC China Energy, which was under the leadership of Yi Jianming. In the past, State Energy HK Limited transferred funds to at least one company associated with Hunter Biden's business associate, Gong Wendong. As detailed in the committee's September 23, 2020 report, Hunter Biden's business partner Yi Jianming had established ties to the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese military and the People's Liberation Army. So too did Gong Wendong, in light of his relationship with Yi. In 2017, Yi was actively working to build CEFC by making investments around the world. According to news reports, Yi actually appeared to be China's unofficial energy envoy, meeting presidents across the globe and even becoming an advisor to a European government. According to open source reporting, these efforts involved cultivating ties with Russia and actors connected to Russian President Vladimir Putin. The committee's September 23, 2020 report illustrated several financial links between Hunter Biden, his business associates, and Russian interests. In 2017, during the time that Yi's companies were sending millions of dollars to Hunter Biden-associated companies, Yi had business dealings with Kremlin-controlled companies and Kremlin-aligned businesses. In effect, Yi appears to have been China's unofficial bridge to Russia on energy. As noted on the committee's September 23, 2020 report, in September 2017, CEFC announced its intention to purchase a 14.2% stake in the Russian state-owned energy company Rosneft for approximately $9 billion. CEFC subsequently agreed to a reported €5 billion loan deal with Russian state-owned VTB Bank to finance the purchase. The $14.2 billion stake would have come from the 19.5% stake in Rosneft previously purchased by a consortium of Glencore, a Swiss mining company, and the Qatar Investment Authority, the sovereign wealth fund of the Qatari government. According to one report, the fact that VTB agreed to loan CEFC money to assist in financing the purchase showed the links between Beijing and Moscow. Though the state-private distinction is incredibly blurry and often irrelevant in both Russia and China, Igor Sechin and other network Sechin and his own network benefited from Yi's assumed connections to China's military intelligence structures. That CEFC expected to raise $5.1 billion in short-term loans from Russia's VTB, a funding vehicle for projects the Kremlin prioritizes, evidenced substantial support in Moscow. Hunter Biden was in close contact with Yi in 2017 and was aware of these developments. In October 2017, message exchange produced to the committees by Bobulinski, Hunter Biden told Bobulinski that although he stayed out of that Russian mess, he discussed the Rosneft deal with Yi personally and was familiar with the deal, including the fact that Yi was pissed off by the execution. In the same exchange, Biden explained that he spoke to Yi on a regular basis. They have a standing once-a-week call. was the first guest in his new apartment. He cooked me lunch himself, and we ate in the kitchen together, and was helping Yi on a number of his personal issues, staff, visas, and some other sensitive things. Another document produced by Bobulinski and dated May 15th, 2017, outlined plans for the expansion of CEFC in Oman, Colombia, Luxembourg, Romania, and other countries. With regard to Oman, the document noted that Hunter Biden was key in relationship setup, messaging the goodwill around the chairman Yi Jianming and the non-conflict status of CEFC entry, a bridge between two great nations. It also identified Hunter Biden as being responsible for writing to all parties and organizing meetings to continue CEFC promote, and it's a typo, as well as approving step-by-step strategic and operational elements. The document further references efforts by James Gilliar and his team and characterized their role as that of liaison and confidant of HB, Hunter Biden, and his partners. Accordingly, these new records confirm the connections between the Biden family and the Communist Chinese government, as well as the links between Hunter Biden's business associates and the Russian government, and further support the committee's September 23, 2020 reports, finding that such relationships created counterintelligence and extortion concerns. To date, the committees have requested records from Hunter Biden, James Gilliar, Tony Bobulinski, and Rob Walker. At this time, only Bobulinski has cooperated with the committees. Then it presents some of the texts and BlackBerry information that we showed last week.
That's excellent, Jason, and we're going to provide the whole report to you. And again, here's the way it works, ladies and gentlemen of the Citizens Grand Jury. I've seen it now ever since I started Judicial Watch, now Freedom Watch, going back 40 some years. Okay, well, not quite that much time for Judicial Watch and Freedom Watch, that goes back 27. Is that to the extent anyone is ever held accountable, it's someone at the lower level or medium level. The elite are never held accountable. And I remember going back to the time at Judicial Watch when I was representing Peter Paul. Peter Paul, a lawyer from Miami, who had put on a Hollywood tribute to Bill Clinton to raise money, about $2 million in hard money campaign contributions, which were otherwise criminal. That was about $1,998,000 over the limit. Okay, and it wasn't reported by Hillary Clinton for her Senate campaign properly. Who did they indict? They indicted Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, not Hillary Clinton. Although we had checks, we had thank you notes, everything confirming that this was hard money contributions. And Peter himself wound up getting prosecuted, not the Clintons, for alleged securities fraud and bank fraud. He did 10 years in prison under house arrest or an actual prison. He was down in Brazil. I visited him twice in a Brazilian prison because that's where he was arrested by Brazilian authorities at the request of the Clinton Justice Department. Moral to the story is the jury in Los Angeles, where this campaign manager was indicted, scratched their heads. Why is it that Hillary Clinton isn't a defendant? And in fact, the defense lawyers raised that. How can we convict this guy when the person who benefited from this, and Peter Paul had direct involvement with both Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton over it? How can we do that? What's the hole in this? You see, so what they do is they'll try to, you saw certain people that were being indicted here, you know, Chinese agents and criminals and whatever. Okay, we satisfied what we have to do. We got a few people here, but let's leave the big higher ups alone. Let's leave Joe Biden alone and Hunter Biden and his whole family alone. This is the way it works. That's why Hillary Clinton and the rest of them and Republicans have figured out how the system works, because they rigged the system. And the American people have no say in it. They continue on. And they continue on to steal, to lie, and to cheat, and are compromised, not just by foreign governments, but compromised by American special interests. I talked about the judges before, the federal court judges. How do you get to be a federal court judge? Campaign contributions, perks, and sometimes even out and out bribes. That's how you get on the federal bench. And that's why Trump's own judges, who he didn't know who he appointed, because they were given to him by Republican lobbyists that benefit by getting their people on the bench, or large law firms that also are corrupt, law firms that give rise to people like Robert Mueller and Jeannie Rhee and others to conduct witch hunts against the president. They've got 2 judges on the federal court in DC. It's in my book, Takes the Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry. Is that they have it wired with the federal judges, and they know nothing's going to happen to them. And that's why. Bought and paid for judges, just like the bought and paid for judges of King George III, but even worse, frankly. So that's what we're dealing with. So we're going to convene this grand jury again in 1 week. We've gone about an hour and 40 minutes. I want you to digest it, take a look at the excerpts we're going to send you from Peter Schweizer's book. We're going to send you the Senate report. We will go over it. We will present an indictment to you next Thursday, and we will get the job done. Only the American people can get the job done. Tom Cotton, who goes around pounding his chest, wants to run for president about all the bad things China has done zip, other than appear on Sean Hannity. Same for Ted Cruz, same for Rand Paul, same for Trey Gowdy, who's a complete fraud, never did anything, let Hillary Clinton off the hook in the Benghazi investigation, and Marco Rubio and the whole lot of them. It's just for show, it's not for dough. Only you can bring about justice. So we'll adjourn the grand jury right now, and we will reconvene next week, and we will be seeking indictments. And we will also present more evidence with regard to the dangerous, reckless endangerment, and frankly, treason that's resulting with regard to allowing people into our country illegally with deadly COVID-19 and variants thereof, with, as Pfizer now admits today, a so-called vaccine that even they say, and you got to believe that they've stretched this one, will last only 6 months. What good is a vaccine if it lasts only 6 months? And I doubt that they're even telling the truth about that. We'll be back next week. Thank you for your time. The American people, thank you for it, because you're courageous. Most people in this country don't want to face up to the reality. They just want to be left alone. But if they continue to have that view, there will be no country left for your kids and grandkids in particular, and future generations. God bless you. Thank you for appearing. We'll be back next week.
And before we terminate the broadcast, Larry, I want to remind our viewers that they can watch a simulcast of these grand jury deliberations on the Freedom Watch YouTube channel. It's really important for viewers to notice that between last week's show and this week's show, Larry, you've added over 15,000 subscribers. Seems improbable. So YouTube appears to find this series of great interest, because I haven't seen a YouTube channel add 12,000 subscribers in a week in some time. But people should subscribe to the Freedom Watch YouTube channel. And I also want to remind viewers that we could not do these citizens' grand juries, not only without the citizen grand jurors, but we couldn't do them without the sponsors, the viewer sponsors who are supporting Freedom Watch by going to freedomwatchusa.org and clicking on the donate button. Freedom Watch is a 501c3, and your contributions are tax deductible. Donations of $50 or more are going to get you a hard copy book, and that will be sent to you from Larry. I also want to remind people that they can sponsor this program by going to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I really want to take this opportunity to thank the generous sponsors that make this show possible. And I want to thank you, Larry, for involving Crowdsource the Truth in these citizens' grand juries. We'll be back next week. Thanks
you are
watching,
courageous.
everyone.
Jason, let me make one comment about what you just said, because it's interesting. Tomorrow, the Supreme Court will decide whether to accept certiorari, that is, whether to hear the case that I brought for Freedom Watch and Laura Loomer years ago over the discrimination, the anti-competitive conduct of big tech, all of the big tech companies in Silicon Valley, whether it's Apple or Instagram or Google. We sued them. And the Supreme Court has now postponed ruling on that for 5 times. So to the extent that it looks like there's a great uptick in YouTube, because one of the allegations is that they were limiting our viewership, that they weren't letting it grow. It has grown for about 8 years. All of a sudden it upticks before the Supreme Court has got to decide whether to take this case. So you can probably bet what's behind that. But we do hope that people will subscribe and go to YouTube, because much like, freedomwatchusa.org, and I'm starting a new website called The New Common Sense, because conservative media is starting to censor itself. It's so afraid. I used to publish on WorldNet Daily. I can't say what I want anymore on WorldNet Daily. They're afraid that they're going to be deplatformed as they were with YouTube. So we need to get our own method of communicating. And it's very important that we get the word out, that you share this with your friends, your colleagues, others that you know. And that's how the colonies coalesced in the days, months, and years leading up to 1776. The printing press, pamphleteers like Thomas Paine, who wrote that the American people needed to rise up. We don't need sunshine soldiers and summer patriots. And this is the way we're going to wage our peaceful and legal revolution. And remember what happened in Poland. As I've said before, millions and millions of people went into the streets, and the Soviets knew their time was up and they had to leave. It's time that we present the same message peacefully and legally to this government on both sides of the aisle. It's time to leave. And we will also be conducting a Third Continental Congress in Philadelphia, Memorial Day in front of Independence Hall. We will take our government back. We will take it back to Philadelphia. Let the criminals stay in Washington and have fun in their Disney World, because Washington does not represent the American people anymore. The American people represent themselves. And it's time for us to consider whether to alter or abolish this government and to form a new government, as it says is our right in the Declaration of Independence. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your bravery. I hope that more Americans will come forward and realize that unless they stick their neck out like our founding fathers did, that we will have no country. God bless you.
And thank you, Larry. And thanks everybody for watching. Have a great day.